Morning, guys. I wanted to talk to you for a couple of minutes this morning about our body's defense systems. The three systems that are involved in our defense are the integumentary system, the immune system, and the lymphatic system. Let's get started. So our integumentary system, I know that's a crazy long word, that's just long for skin. It's our skin and our hair and our oil and sweat glands that help do a lot of cool stuff for us. The scales and the feathers and the rough hides and the hair on the outside of animals is part of their integumentary system, just like the little hairs that are on your arms and stuff and your head are part of your integument. Our integumentary system does a couple of really cool things for us. It firstly serves as a protective barrier for all the stuff inside. So our skin is covering all of our internal organs, which is neat, so they're not exposed to the elements on the outside. And it also helps us from being dehydrated, which I know seems like maybe sometimes you are dehydrated because you call your skin ashy, but you put a little lotion on there, it absorbs it right up, and then you're not ashy anymore, right? Okay, so our skin protects us from invading pathogens. Pathogens are anything that can cause disease, like bacteria and viruses. They're like our first line of defense to help those things not get inside of our body and attack our organs. I know they sometimes get in other ways by like breathing and touching other people and then touching our finger to our eye. But in general, most things we come across, they don't impact us because our skin is like our warrior. It's like our body armor, okay? Another really cool thing our skin does is it makes something called vitamin D. So when you go outside and you're in the sun, the sunlight turns a chemical in your skin into something called vitamin D3, and then it goes to your liver, and then your liver turns that into vitamin D, and vitamin D actually helps your bones absorb more calcium. And we all know that you need calcium for strong bones. Okay, so that's a really neat thing that the sun and the skin do together. Your skin also helps to regulate your body's temperature. So we talked about this specific thing during feedback mechanisms when we were talking about when you get hot, your body recognizes that you're hot, and kind of your skin will send a message to your brain saying you're hot, and your brain will say, hey, release some water, and you sweat, and there's a little bit of water on the outside of your skin, and that water has salt in it, and the salt kind of absorbs a little more water, and then when air or breeze comes over it, it cools your skin off, and then the water evaporates, and you're not so hot. That's kind of a cool feature, right? So that's just a graphic of how this works. So when your skin sweats, the brain detects an increase in your temperature. It sends a message, get rid of some water. Conversely, when you're cold, your skin sends a message to your brain you're cold, and it creates goosebumps, and sometimes your teeth chatter and your muscles shake. And when that happens, every time your muscles move, it makes a little energy and creates a little heat, and that keeps you just a little bit warmer. Okay, so they help retain the body heat, like I just said, and that is aided by a level of subcutaneous fat. I'll kind of circle around this yellow area. This is subcutaneous fat, and fat is an insulator, right? So you know that bears, they stock up on a lot of food, and you know the squirrels and the chipmunks, they hide nuts, and so they can have extra food so they can have extra layers of fat and warmth in the winter time, right? Because it's cold and they don't want to freeze to death. So the next system we're talking about is our immune system. And the main function of our immune system is to fight off infections, okay? The two parts of the immune system we'll talk about mostly are our white blood cells. Okay, remember we have red blood cells that carry oxygen and stuff around, and we have these white blood cells. And white blood cells make something called antibodies, and antibodies fight against those pathogens, those disease-causing things, okay? It travels throughout the blood, and it helps the circulatory system helps our white blood cells be distributed to the parts of the body that need help, right? That need fighting against disease. Okay. So one component, there are lots of different kinds of white blood cells, but one specific type are called neutrophils. And the job of these neutrophils is to like engulf diseases. So when they find a bad guy disease, they kind of wrap themselves around it and bring it into their body. And inside their body are a lot of lysosomes. Remember that lysosomes are one of those organelles, or mini organs inside your cell. And the job of those lysosomes is to digest stuff. So when those neutrophils bring those pathogens, the viruses and bacteria and stuff, into themselves, the lysosomes digest the pathogens, and then they can't affect you if they've been eaten, right? So another component of our immune system are our B cells. We have B cells, and we have T cells, and we have M cells, and we have all these kinds of cells. But these B cells make something called antibodies. So when a cell brings a pathogen or a part of a pathogen and presents it to a B cell, and the B cell like takes a snapshot of it kind of and says, hey, cool, I'm going to make an antibody, and this antibody is going to go and attach to this pathogens, and we're going to always recognize them. It's like putting a flashing light on the pathogen saying, I'm a bad guy, come kill me, right? And your body always has memory of these things. So once an antibody has been created to something like chicken pox or a flu or a specific type of cold, you keep this little filing cabinet in your immune system of all the things you've come in contact with, and the next time you come across it, you're not as impacted by it because your body can respond to it quicker and kill the pathogen faster. Okay. So these antibodies, again, are a huge part of our immune system. Once they attach to an antigen is just a foreign molecule that elicits a specific immune response against it, right? And you can tell by this image right here that looks like the big Y, that on the end of it, we have something called an antigen binding site, and it attaches to a very specific antigen. And this body seems to have 6 different antigens, but your body could have, you know, hundreds of thousands of them because there's lots of different viruses and bacteria and stuff out there, right? So, but this particular one attaches to this yellow cap-looking thing, which means that it wouldn't attach to the purple pyramid-looking one, right? So it's neat how they're very specific and only made for one specific pathogen. Okay. A T cell is yet another kind of cell in your immune system, and these things attack body cells which are infected by bacteria or viruses. They also, the added bonus, they target and destroy tumor cells. Remember, tumor cells are those cells in your body that have mistakenly gone into a constant repeat of the cell cycle over and over again and never rest and grow. So the ones, they actually say, hey, that cell right there is repeating a cell cycle over and over again. Let me fight against it, so that we don't have rapid tumor growth, right? So these T cells are very important, okay? One thing that really negatively harms T cells is called the human immunodeficiency virus. This is the precursor or thing that leads to AIDS or acquired immune deficiency virus, and it specifically attacks a helper T cell, which is not a T cell. It's the cell that helps the T cell, okay? So when these helper T cells are invaded by HIV, what happens is the HIV virus then makes lots and lots of copies of itself using the materials inside of the helper T cell. And when the T cell is so full of these HIV viruses, it explodes, it bursts open, and then it lets all of these little things out in the open, like when you crack open like one of those confetti eggs, all the confetti goes everywhere, right? So all these little viruses that were contained inside this helper T cell blow up, and this is happening all over your body for the people that have HIV. And so the virus destroys all their helper T cells, and when they don't have helper T cells, their immune system doesn't work because helper T cells are helping to fight off all these diseases. And so when you don't have an immune system, you can't fight off things like the flu or pneumonia or a cold. So unfortunately, people with HIV often succumb or die to secondary infections that they could normally fight against if they had an immune system, right? We'll talk more about viruses when we get into that section next semester. Okay, so antibiotics are an outside way that we can help our immune system fight diseases. And this word, let's break it down. Antibiotic. Remember that anti means against, and bio, remember we're taking biology, is study of life, so bio means life. So antibiotics kill life, all right? So that means they specifically target living organisms, in this case bacteria, because bacteria are alive, and kill them to help our immune system kind of speed up the healing process. They do not, however, work on viruses because viruses are not alive. Remember that we have to have 5 components for living things. 1 is they're all made of cells. 2 is they have DNA. 3 is they maintain homeostasis. 4 is they metabolize nutrients. And 5 is they reproduce. Viruses have DNA, okay? And once inside a host cell, they can reproduce, but they're not made of cells, okay? And they can't metabolize nutrients on their own, all right? and they can't really maintain homeostasis. So antibiotics don't work against viruses, just against bacteria and other living things. Okay. So the last system we'll talk about today is our lymphatic system. And this system works really, really closely with our circulatory system. It's actually kind of considered a subsystem of our circulatory system. And it includes a lot of the liquid stuff that's in and around your blood called lymph, and it's a clear, colorless liquid. And it helps to just destroy the wastes that are in our blood and then return the fluid clean back to our blood to help it pump stuff around our body. Okay, so when our fluid passes through the lymph nodes, which are located like on the side of your neck and sometimes on your armpit, and there's some in your thighs, and you actually probably have had a doctor touch them, and if you're sick, the doctor will say, oh, your lymph nodes are enlarged, and that'll let him know that you have a lot of lymph in there trying to get rid of wastes, and when there's a lot of lymph getting rid of waste, that means that you had some kind of infection, right? So what I said again was that this lymph system just returns fluid that's been cleaned in the lymph nodes back into the circulatory system so that it can help circulate and clean more stuff out, right? So it's a really, really important component of our immune system and our circulatory system.